Dear colleagues, we will be starting our webinar shortly. We're just allowing time to settle for all participants with their settings. We will start with the 90 seconds video, and then I will continue with the agenda for today. Thanks for your patience, and look to meet you all soon. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all colleagues joining our webinar hosted by ICLE in its capacity as the focal point of local government and municipal authorities constituency. My name is Yunus Arıkan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at ICLE World Secretariat based in Bonn, and I'm also conducting the task of the focal point role. Today we'll be focusing the 19th edition of our monthly webinars towards COP26. In our previous practices that every month, we had two sessions of these webinars, one at 10 a.m. in the European time and then at 4 p.m. This follows the same today. This month's uniqueness is that we wanted to touch upon the upcoming agendas in the UN. So we had another session in the morning focusing on the UN summits on energy and food. And this day, the afternoon session now, we will be delighted to have a more focused discussion with our colleagues from the UK on subnational action. But this will all be part of the preparation toward COP26. So what we will be doing is that we will start with our basic highlights of let's say 101 to UN climate processes and how are we advancing in this process, especially the policy level activities and progress achieved since the last webinar we had last month. And then I will be inviting my colleagues from UK. We will invite them to hear their first interventions for the policy approaches that they are applying relevant to UK climate action or relevant to COP26 agenda. After the first round, then we will have another round, especially on the COP26 logistics update, which we know it's a very evolving agenda. There are still a lot of unknowns or ambiguities, but we are doing our best to align ourselves with upcoming announcements from the UNFCCC and COP26 presidency. Once we hear this, then we will have the second round with our colleagues from UK, and we will then first start with our colleague Duncan Booker from Glasgow as the host city of the COP. Then I will ask my other colleagues to contribute with their plans on how they are planning to engage in the agenda of COP26. And my final housekeeping announcement: this session is being recorded. And we are uploading our recordings later on the YouTube, and then you will also receive the presentations afterwards. During the sessions, we encourage you to keep your points, any interventions, any questions or contributions. If it is extremely burning, you can type it in the question and answer box or chat box. But once the interventions are concluded, we could open the floor for your verbal interventions as well, so that we ensure both interactivity, but also stick to the consistency. We usually keep our sessions to 60 minutes, but because of our dear guests and the loaded agenda, we are flexible to continue up to the 90 minutes. And if especially from our speakers, if they have to leave early, we will definitely prioritize them, obviously. But those who were able to stay with us, we will continue to the extent possible that we will not rush to time-bounded pressure. And through this opportunity, once again, I'd like to thank all my guests for today: Hilary Tanner from LGA, Talia Berryman from UK 100, Duncan Booker from Glasgow, Serafin Vidal from COSLA, and Will also from Corsides UK. So I'm looking forward to an exciting session with you. As I said, in the morning we had Rohit Sen and Peter De Franceschi joining us for the energy discussions. And originally we were planning also to have colleagues from Scottish Government for today's session, but there was a conflict in their agendas. So we hope to have them in our next webinars. You have seen the video at the beginning. Those who were able to watch, this was our Paris Agreement 5th anniversary celebration video. There are other videos on that anniversary from other members of the LGMA. These are the networks who are either accredited to the UNFCCC, or we are still engaging with them through our mailing list and communications, be it national, be it regional, be it global networks, so that we avoid any bureaucratical barrier to our interactions, so that global advocacy of climate, global climate advocacy of local and regional governments is inclusive and strengthened by all partners from across the world. You can also see previous updates of our engagement, the previous COPs, through our landing zone, citiesandregions.org, and we will be updating our COP26 pages as well. Just to continue with our basics, I will try to cut it as quick as possible so that we listen from our guests. But for those who are attending those webinars for the first time, Paris Agreement is important because it's a new era in global climate action. It is a universal commitment by every national government. And the uniqueness is that it is not just anymore a national commitment, it is multi-stakeholder and multi-level. It has a vision for multi-stakeholder and multi-level action. It has a definite target to keep below 2 degrees and, if possible, to reach the 1.5 degree goals. And it also has a climate neutrality target by mid-century. These are unique elements that was not available in UNFCCC or Kyoto Protocol before. Obviously, signatories of Paris Agreement are national governments, so primary responsibility is on their shoulders. And in that sense, what we say is that none of the first wave of the national climate plans, which are called nationally determined contributions, NDCs, none of them fit for Paris Agreement because they were all prepared before Paris Agreement was approved. So obviously, none of them are referring to these principles that we have listened to here. That's the reason the success of COP26 depends our homework at home, so that every nation should bring their new NDCs so that they prepare their NDCs according to those principles. On behalf of local and regional governments, we also have a duty because, as we have said, we have a preambular paragraph which refers our engagement, and that's making us a part of the process. It's not anymore a voluntary action. Therefore, we are encouraging and inviting every local and regional government to enshrine the Paris Agreement in their municipal or regional action plans, commit to climate neutrality, climate emergency declarations, so that it is part of our municipal plans as well. And in terms of other stakeholders, we are talking about a transformative agenda. It should be all hands on deck, and especially those who were not favoring the fossil era, they should be finding themselves in this process in a much better condition so that it is inclusive, that transformation also serves to the migrants, to the urban poor, so that every part of the society is putting their contributions to this process and helping us to reach our goals. This is a cyclic process. The COP is an annual body that is gathering every year. The country who is politically responsible is the around November, December continues to be the political, let's say, shepherd of the process. Last year it was, and 2019 it was Chile. Now it's coming to the UK. Since Paris Agreement, we have, in addition to the presidents of the COP, which is usually ministers of environment, we have high-level climate action champions. In the case of Chile, this is Gonzalo Munoz. In the case of UK preparations, you may have seen that UK is claiming or striving to be the most inclusive COP, and in that sense, they are introducing new mechanisms, new bodies. They have assigned, in addition to Nigel Topping, a number of advisors, Mark Carney on finance and Mariette Trevelyan on adaptation. They have regional ambassadors for every continent, and they have Sir David Attenborough as the people's advocate, which is a special role. Over these months, UK presidency also have mobilized new bodies. They have introduced engagement channels. In many of them, there are representatives from networks, and we also have colleagues who have been part of this process. And we are trying to make sure that those inputs are also appropriately published on the website so that the transparency is ensured. In terms of the priorities of the UK, we're very happy that collaboration is also on top of those 4 priorities, because we are saying that we want to have a multi-level climate action starting from COP onwards. We are in a virtual mode, COVID-19 measures. So we are following the traditional UN agendas. The online meetings are taking place. Presidency is continuing its consultations, time to time ministerials, and we are time to time providing input. And also in the high-level climate action champions through Marrakesh Partnership, Race to Zero, Race to Resilience, and Race to Zero breakthroughs. There are new mechanisms, new information, new initiatives are coming up. And we hope these will all be feeding into the NDCs and the outcome of COP26. This chart, we will discuss more in that later on, but this is day by day the topics that the UK president wants to talk about, and you can see it covers all the agendas under the sky in urban living or in a national setting. Therefore, that is making both the excitement that we are proposing to have or expecting to have transformational agendas, but it's also adding complexities because it's not easy to cover or fulfill all the expectations. But I think this is the right way to go forward, that climate agenda is a development agenda, climate is a civilization agenda, that we have to create a new type of civilization. And the importance is that these agendas will also shape our engagement during the COP as well. We will touch upon this later on. For the past couple of months, in December in 2019 in Madrid, we wanted to say that we were approaching towards a multi-level climate action at multiple fronts for localizing Paris Agreement with our commitments and disease, then accelerating action on other areas, including circularity, nature, food. We would expand the climate community debate broader, like culture, like urbanization, ministerial, education, training, and awareness communities, but also adding climate justice and social equity, which is the heart of the expectation or preparations from Scottish government and Glasgow as well. During this couple of months, especially, we have seen game changers with the submission of new NDCs, especially from US, Japan, Dominican Republic. We are seeing that multi-level collaborations coming up. In the biodiversity space, Scottish government and the local and regional government networks have made a huge progress by adopting the second 10-year action plan. We hope this could feed into the climate space as well. And UN Habitat, the UN agency leading the urbanization process, is also putting climate a priority, and we look forward to a more active engagement of urbanization ministerials. Over these months now, when we come to a COP mode, that the results are enshrined in Glasgow outcome, Glasgow package, we are expecting that these agendas should be consolidated. And in that sense, we are inviting all of the LGMA members for changing of gears. So instead of towards multi-level action, we want to say that it is time for multi-level action, that we have to make sure that this second phase of Paris Agreement is becoming a new normal for multi-level action. We want to make sure climate is taking into account urbanization as a sector, both in terms of climate action, but also especially on climate finance, market and non-market mechanisms. We want to make sure all our climate plans are inclusive, holistic, nature-friendly, that is enriched with all inputs from these topics that we will cover. And we also would like to say that we have to engage in the UNFCCC process more professionally, much more skilled, and we would invite LGMA members to be much more focused on their year-round engagement in the bodies of the UNFCCC, so that it's not just the COP itself, but the engagement throughout the modalities, the workshops should be also be receiving inputs, very concrete inputs from our constituencies, so that this is a homework that we have to improve our engagement process, so that this will be one of the outcome of COP26 as well. Over the past few weeks, we have seen some important progress. We have released the Human Settlements Action Pathway. G20 climate and environment ministers met. There were several communiques. In London, COP26 presidency hosted a July ministerial. UK 100, one of the core partners in the UK, have released a communique. We will listen more from Talia. UN Food Systems had a pre-summit. COP26 logistics were for the first time officially announced. For months, we were speculating, or we were trying to translate the information. Finally, there is more, let's say, official information, at least on the website. We are also engaged in the vaccination process. We will touch upon this in the logistics discussion, but it's a bit unclear about how it's evolving. There are national process coming up in Brazil, for example. Alok Sharma was visiting Brazil. Cities, states, business have committed in an impressive number in Brazil to Race to Zero, and Race to Resilience coming up as well. Another example, Dominican Republic, all local governments in Dominican Republic, similar to Japan, similar to Korea, they committed to Race to Zero. That's impressive. We have seen IPCC report coming up, and which will be an alert for all of us to be much more ambitious in our outcomes in COP. And biodiversity process, which is another Rio Convention, just announced that they will be convening the first phase in a hybrid format, which means there will be some people physically present in Kunming, but most of the delegation will be intervening virtually. This will be important. The way the decisions are made will be guiding us, maybe inspirational or setting some precedent to COP Glasgow as well. And with this, we will discuss with the presidency later on. We discussed the two summits, what was the uniqueness of this in the previous morning session. We will share the presentation with you, but the good news is that there are concrete commitments coming from energy, food, and others, so that this gives the climate negotiators to be much more ambitious when they come to COP26, so that COP26 really delivers the expectations. With this, I really would like to give a break. I am looking first in the chat box whether there's any burning issues from regions 4. Okay, it's related to side events. I suggest that we touch upon this in the logistics part, which will be in the second part. So without further ado, I would like to invite my colleagues in this round now to share their experiences. As we said, one of the reasons of this round is that we all know it's still not clear who will be able to visit Scotland, Glasgow in person because of several reasons. Therefore, we want to bring UK and Scotland and all the partners to you, because these webinars are shared globally. So whatever happens in November, at least you have a feeling of what is our plans, how they are engaged in the work of the climate action across UK. And with their information, we still have a couple of weeks ahead. We can enrich our preparations, and maybe, hopefully, if it enables, we can all meet in person safely and enjoy and strengthen our collaboration. With this, I'd like to suggest that we follow the order that you have seen here in this first round. And I would like to invite my colleagues to intervene, especially what is their plans or what their proposals for climate action in the UK, also relevant to COP26 negotiations. So we will first start with Talia Berryman, Network Program Manager from UK 100. Talia, thanks for joining us. If you want to share any screens, feel free to do so, and the floor is yours.
Hi, Eunice. Thanks so much for inviting me to speak, and I really do hope we can all meet in person in Glasgow in November. I'm keeping my fingers and toes crossed. I don't have any slides, and just as a brief introduction for those who don't know UK 100, so we're the only local government network in the UK that is solely focused on tackling the climate emergency, clean air and clean energy. So currently we have over 65 members who are committed to really ambitious net zero targets ahead of UK national government. So in the UK, we have a net zero by 2050 target. all of our members have to sign up to 2030 for their own council emissions, so their vehicles, their buildings, etc., and then 2045 for the whole district or the whole area. So we're really proud that we've managed to get so many members signed up to this really ambitious pledge, which we launched at the end of last year in December. We don't have any kind of COP negotiation plans. We don't want to get involved in the negotiations because we are very much UK specific and focused on advocating to national government for changes that enable local climate action here in the UK. So I thought I'd really quickly talk about our summit and conference that we held on the 13th of July and that Eunice already mentioned. I'm just going to put 2 links in the chat if you'd like to have a look afterwards. So we had this international Net Zero Local Leadership Summit and Conference. We had a day of events which included some international networking sessions, which I'm sure some of you attended, or some of your network members, where we connected our officers from our member local authorities with those from 30 different cities and regions across the globe. So that was really exciting and kind of our first flavour of international work that we've done. At the summit in July, we created a net zero communique that was co-written by our members, and this was signed by over 30 mayors and local leaders. It contains 6 asks on transport, homes and heating, energy, finance, powers and nature. So you can see in the second link that I've sent that has a link to the communique with more details, but they're very UK specific asks on different policies. So for example, the finance one, the UK government is currently exploring a UK infrastructure bank, which I know they have in a few other countries. We're asking that this UK infrastructure bank has a net zero mandate so that it can deliver on local and regional projects and programs. So we're really prioritising local climate investment on that. We have one on transport, which is to do with enabling EV charging infrastructure, especially in rural areas. One thing that's really unique about our network as well is that it's not just about the large cities or the mega cities. We have representation across all tiers of local government in the UK, from district councils that may have 50,000 people up to the Greater London Authority that has a fair few million. We also have a countryside climate network, which is specifically for countryside and rural local authorities that we've got 30 members. So we're really making sure that they have a voice ahead of COP, and that any national policies and priorities do reflect the countryside and these other local authorities in mind. Based on the communique that I posted in the chat, we're actually now having discussions with Minister Kwasi Kwarteng and the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy about delivering a net zero local delivery board and how this would work. So we've done a bit of research that is coming out in the next few months, and we're continuing those conversations. So I'm going to wrap up there because I've given a lot of quite specific information, but we're doing a media moment before COP and a media moment 1 week after COP that is basically asking the UK government to do something really ambitious at COP, really commit to 1.5, and that our members, UK local government, stand ready to deliver on whatever the outcome of COP is, and hopefully it's a really ambitious one. Thanks, Eunice.
Thanks, Talia. Congratulations both for your efforts, and we were also very happy to see you in joining the LGMA processes since the beginning, and we're looking forward to benefiting from your proposals in our communications, and that's the whole spirit of LGMA, that we learn from each other. I also appreciate that you mentioned that when we say subnationals, for example, in this highlight, that there's enormous type of local and regional governments across every country. Every country has a different type of even spatial administration. So there's never a one size fits for all, but the message is that everyone should be ambitious. And obviously pioneers like in your membership is good, so that the others could also follow, and on the pathway that was opened could be expanded with others joining us. And in that sense, obviously, the let's say national or broader networks have also played a role. And in that sense, let's go to now this time the Scottish Association of Local Governments, COSLA. Serafin has been with us for a long time as well, and on behalf of COSLA, they have been actively also engaged in both at the national but also European and global levels. So Serafin, let's hear from your side how COSLA and its members are preparing for policy proposals in UK and also relevant to COP26.
Thank you, Yunus. It's a real pleasure once again to see you and to hear from all the colleagues after a bit of a small break. I think some of you have heard this before, but I think for the benefit for others, I will be just giving a bit of an update on policy and where we stand. I mean, it is quite interesting. I mean, COSLA, for those who don't know, is the National Association of Local Authorities from Scotland. The 32 local authorities we have in Scotland, which are among the biggest in the developed world. I mean, certainly the biggest in Europe on average. I mean, average population 150,000. And they got like significantly large powers and funds. Although my job is to say that they are not powerful enough, but they are definitely in terms of climate policy delivery. They do have a significant amount of reach and resources on their own or a specific weight. And that's something that is perhaps permeates our approach to COP policy and as Yunus knows, our approach to climate delivery prior and after successive COPs that we have engaged with. I think in that respect, and just to be brief, I mean, it's interesting. The UK is interesting because the UK is both a unitary state, particularly in regards to England, where the UK government is the English government, sort of in certain important areas relating to climate policy. And in the same way, it's also a federal system where a lot of climate legislation and policy is done exclusively in Scotland. This is quite different to other federal or regionalized states like Spain or Italy, where the central government has half of the policy and the other half of the policy or the further trimmings are done at a regional level. And therefore, it's just a good coincidence that as we want to do this, a multi-level action COP that is held in the UK, because you could see the problems and also the opportunities of having this multi-level arrangement, because it's quite central to the fabric of what the UK is. COSLA, unlike the colleagues in UK 100, is exclusively a Scottish organization, of course. It's very, very long existence, could be actually traced to 6 centuries ago, really, and I'm not joking. And therefore, we in Scotland, there's a number of policy, the policy set. We are, as I say, contrast to the colleagues who spoke earlier, exclusively Scottish, and we have a cross-sectoral approach. We are the organization that negotiates most policy concern local government in Scotland and so whatever appropriate at the UK level. And we negotiate the finance, which is quite, I think, quite important in what we are talking. As you know, Scotland has quite significant policy toolkit and legislative toolkit. As you know, there's significant pieces of legislation in Scotland that in some cases there has been for quite a while the most ambitious in the world, including, of course, as you know, the 2045 target for net zero. But I think most important is the fact that we have a quite sophisticated multi-level arrangement within Scotland. For instance, the Scottish National Performance Framework is like a partnership system whereby the Scottish government and local authorities negotiate a number of policy outcomes, including, for instance, the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations implementation in Scotland, and of course, climate policy. I obviously will not. I mean, I will not get into further details in terms of, because I can be happy to share the policy aims. But I think just want to emphasize 2 things. I mean, for instance, I think that the policy at the moment, we are in an ambitious period, but at the same time we need to actually focus more on delivery, including Scotland, because you have to walk the walk after you talk the talk. And I think that this is obviously something that we have to do domestically, but at the same time, we see this COP26 as a way of further harnessing that in the actual framework of the UNFCCC process. And one thing we would like to particularly highlight is that while the constituency, I think the 6 priorities are quite robust. Perhaps what we're lacking here, and I think in terms of practical things for the discussion, is to harness that even more specifically in terms of influencing the conclusions of this summit. I mean, it's different to Paris, but still, I think there's an opportunity to further harness the multi-level dimension. We are in the lucky position, I think, the constituency, that we have the Edinburgh Declaration on Biodiversity, which is about how to actually materialize the multi-level delivery of national climate ambition in a domestic way. And I think that's something that we have said in the past, you have heard that before, is something we should emphasize even more as we get close to COP in our communication advocacy at COP. And I think that is something that is, together with finance, something that we should all work together on that. As I say, it's I think we should be sharper on that, and I hope we are able to certainly expand the sort of language of COP that builds from Paris and doesn't get like a token passing reference. And I think in that respect, the Citizen Built Environment Day is quite crucial. I'm also happy to share, if people have interest, that Scotland has just recently published its own sort of national voluntary contribution, which complements, of course, the UK one, as an example of the sort of things we should be doing in a multi-level fashion. But also multi-level fashion has to involve from the local government to the devolved central governments at the United Nations. And I hope we can even sharpen our messaging as we go towards COP. And of course, we are in the activity we hope to do. We want to be doing that in synergy with the wider constituency from other countries, and helping what we can, as we are, of course, the host, the local government organization of the host country, in this case, Scotland/UK, which other colleagues will talk later. Thank you.
Let me unmute myself. Thanks a lot, Serafin, especially the diversity, both going from your national, but also contributing to the global agendas. And I think that is the strength, that we are reality checking and we are feeding anything that is left void, but also the practical implementation. When we say multi-level, it is not arbitrary. It has to be really finding its ground, that every associations should be embracing this, and then the respective governments should practice this. So by the time we reach to the COP, I think we would like to see more examples of this. And as I said, Scotland being one of the most ambitious, the way they work with their local governments, be it urban, be it rural, how they benefit from each other, how they drive each other, would also be very, very good. And from Scotland, let's go now to the rest of the UK. Obviously, Local Government Association is the largest network, or the official, let's say, body that combines all elected officials in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. We're delighted to have Hilary Tanner, and she will also share with us how the LGMA Association as a whole is intervening in this policy processes. Hilary, thanks for joining us, and the floor is yours. I remember you had the presentation, so I'm stopping my screening, sharing my screen so that you can take over.
Thank you, Eunice. Now let me just share screen. Here we are. Okay, and let me just play this. Okay, everyone see that okay? Yep. I'm looking for some, yeah, thank you, great. Okay, so I was just going to talk through our overarching policy ask, and just to explain, you've mentioned it kindly already, Eunice, but the Local Government Association is a political organisation. So our strategy is set by councillors, elected councillors, and we have a kind of governance process that allows us to say that we're the kind of cross-political voice of councillors in England. So that's our kind of niche in this argument. So, and I've just put here our sort of, just to talk you through our overarching policy ask on climate change. On COP26, I think echoing what everybody else has said, we really want to see a strong local government presence there, a kind of meaningful local government presence there. And we're also kind of want to amplify those messages about multi-level working as well. That's, you know, we see that as a kind of relationship between councils and communities, but also between, you know, global action and then down to kind of local government level. We're trying to kind of weave that into our messaging around COP26. But then onto the kind of more day-to-day business of climate change. One of our kind of strong asks to government is what we're calling a national framework for tackling to really speed up the ambition for delivering net zero. So some kind of framework arrangement between central government and local government that, for example, sets out the roles, who's responsible for what, where the funding comes from. And again, that framework might include some legislation or regulation as well to allow us to really speed up and deliver. So that kind of sense of partnership. And one of the things we've tried to set out to government as well is a very strong offer from local government. So we're not just asking for money all the time, but we're saying, well, look, we spend a lot of money, we procure a lot of services. So, you know, if we're working within that framework, we've got the opportunity to kind of play a strong role in that. So I've got another slide on this, Spain, continuing the theme of sort of partnership working. And then again, to stick on that theme of working with central government, one of the things we've asked for, as well as the framework, is for what we've called a task force. So a mechanism for bringing ministers together with local leaders to actually talk about how we bring some of these cross-cutting issues together. So, for example, we know that one of the barriers for England or for the rest of the UK is the skills agenda, getting people with the right skills to do retrofitting and installing net zero technologies. But we have a real problem with that. We have, somebody counted it up, we have sort of 16 different funding streams, all going locally into skills, some money for apprentices here, some money for something else there. So, you know, we think there's a real need for this kind of task force approach to actually get the leaders together, people who are empowered to make decisions, and actually work out how they speed up some of the delivery, how they kind of connect some of these different funding streams. You know, there is money there, but actually how do you use it in a smart way, and how do you use it in a way that actually focuses on place? So this is a kind of another our strong themes when we talk about climate change, is to talk about solutions that actually focus on places and on the ground. So this is another kind of, you know, we'd love to see an announcement about this at COP if we can. That would be really fantastic. But some sort of pilots where we test out some place-based solutions. You know, can we try some things because we know we've got to scale this up quickly. Can we try some pilots that would allow us to do that? I mean, we've left it open as to what those pilots might be, but we think the sort of topics that would really lend themselves to that adaptation. So where we know that there is quite a lot of capital money going into things like flood defence, but can you link that up with other bits of funding for infrastructure? And then another area where we think we could really get this kind of place idea up and running really quickly is around the skills. So can you, again, we think local government's really well placed to do this because they can see the kind of pipeline of you know, investment waiting to happen, and then match that up with the delivery of the skills. So a pitch that we're making to government on place-based solutions. So I think that's the end of my policy update for you. I've tried to keep it timely for you, Eunice. I'll stop sharing there, but come back to me when you're ready to the next bit. Okay, thank you.
Excellent, and I also I appreciate also your contributions, and especially one of the things that over the past 20 years that we were struggling in the UNFCCC era, that climate is primarily held by environment ministers, and in most cases, in many countries, environment ministers are not too much aware of what local governments are doing, and there are some countries who are able to be having them a more different dialogue. There are some countries who have ministers of environment and urbanization together. There are some countries who have standalone local government or housing or public works. And in England is UK is one of those. And that's one of the reasons why I want to bring this discussion, so that their different branches of the government can also speak on behalf of us, so that it is not just the local governments against national governments, but it is a different community coming to the climate space. And the second point that was particular for me important, you mentioned about this task force. As we mentioned, UK is practicing this for the COP, the Cities and Regions Advisory Council. I think you are engaging as part of this process. I think that let's hope this can continue after COP, so that it comes a nice legacy. And the third point that was important, we had discussed in the previous months, in Japan, for example, there's a very exciting process going on that they are committing to a higher ambition because of their net zero cities and prefectures in Japan. And in the Japanese NDC, they would already have announced that they want to work with 100 local governments, like a domino effect, so that to exactly implement what is being tested so that it can roll out. And therefore, it may be interesting that this can be connected to what you will be doing with the UK, because what we have seen, the very powerful message that US and Japan also agreed to support globally those subnational policies on climate action, so that the more we can connect through our networks, we can make those kind of models to be part of the outcomes, as you mentioned. So a lot of exciting opportunities. Now I want to come to another network in the UK. Honestly speaking, many of those networks, of course, there are possibly others that we are missing, but we are also, that's the beauty of having COP in every time in a different country. So you are getting familiar with your networks, your members, and Core Cities is what we have been knowing, that through their members, especially we have a lot of members of ICLE, but they were very active over the past couple of months, especially on the Urban 7. Therefore, we would like to have also the opportunity to listen from Core Cities, how they are engaging in the climate policy. And I'm very happy Will is sharing their views on their behalf. So Will, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eunice, and thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I'll start off with the basic introductions for those of you who don't know. So Core Cities UK is an organisation that represents the interests of the UK's major cities outside of London. Like LGA colleagues, we are a political organisation, and like the LGA, we do exactly what our elected representatives tell us to. We are 11 strong at the minute in terms of cities. We have Belfast, Birmingham, Bristol, Cardiff, Glasgow, Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle, Nottingham and Sheffield. And our mission is really to unlock the full potential of our great city regions, create a stronger, fairer economy and society. Our raison d'etre is devolution and decentralisation. Some of you may know that the UK is the most centralised country in the OECD's list of developed countries. This is something we work to change through dialogue and evidence sharing with government, but basically we believe the future is local. That comes across a range of policy initiatives, but perhaps nowhere more importantly than climate. So first on COP26, obviously tremendously excited to have this event happening in a core city. It's a massive privilege. Anyone from Glasgow obviously recognises this is a huge opportunity to carve the city's name and history and spread the word about the great work and innovation that goes on, not just in Glasgow, but across at a local level across the UK cities. And I know that colleagues in Glasgow will look forward to meeting you and look forward to hopefully welcoming you in November. Our main thrust at COP will be towards investment. So Core Cities, London Councils, which represents London boroughs, and a group called Connected Places Catapult. We've come together to address the challenge of attracting enough investment to UK cities to achieve net zero. We call this work the UK Cities Climate Investment Commission. It has one big output really, which is a report and almost a pitch book to investors of the green finance opportunities that exist within cities. We will launch this at COP26. The first event will take place on November 3rd, which some of you may know is the finance theme day of COP. We'll launch our pitch book primarily to an investment audience, and that event will take place in Glasgow City Chambers, that if you do go to Glasgow, I urge you to visit as a magnificent piece of municipal architecture. Secondly, we're planning an event on the Cities and Regions theme day of COP26 on the 11th of November. This is likely to have more of an international flavour and maybe more interest to ICLE and others. There'll be a panel discussion and hopefully an audience debate and a chance for political leaders to meet and greet. And again, the theme will be around about investment, attracting investment. And obviously happy to keep you involved and update you on how you can get involved. And I'll put links to the commission itself within the chat. Part of the event on the 11th will be a partners investors reception as well, where we will partner with other agencies to host a civic reception stroke dinner alongside Glasgow City Council. That will take place in the centre of Glasgow. We'll also have a number of political representatives in Glasgow for COP from our own group. So that's our leaders and mayors, So we're always happy to help if you do need a UK political perspective on urban climate change at any event you might be organising. We have loads of good work and innovation to showcase. For example, a recent announcement from colleagues in Nottingham that it's now the first place in the UK to have wireless electric charging for taxis. Secondly, Core Cities organised the first G7 U7 event in June, which Eunice has already talked about. For those of you who didn't come to that, it's kind of the first gathering of urban networks from the G7 countries. We managed to attract networks from Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, and the USA, with also cities from Australia and Korea being invited to observe. The idea was to run this parallel to the actual G7 summit, which took place, and it was a success. It was obviously challenging to deal with that many languages and that many time zones, but really fascinating discussions which underlined how much we all have in common in terms of a local level on issues including COVID recovery, but also COP played a major part in the discussion, and the vital role cities and local communities will play in fighting global warming. And I know this is a message that we'll all be reinforcing in Glasgow. As a U7 update, colleagues from Germany have very generously agreed to take the concept of U7 forward to the next G7 gathering. That will schedule to take place in Germany next year. So we look forward to working with them to grow this event as a vital forum for input and discussion, and to continue to grow its profile alongside the main G7 Leaders Summit. As I said, I will share links to both the Commission and the U7 in the chat, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Will. It's really good to see additional leadership or different perspective, especially on core discussions on finance. Definitely, it will be very, very interesting, and it's also good to make use of the G7 presidency of the UK to long-lasting initiatives. So I will definitely come back to the opportunities during COP. But now let's go back to our host city. Duncan will be speaking on behalf of the Glasgow City Council. Obviously, it's one of those cities who have been involved in all these networks, and in that sense, one of those who are really practicing how they can then translate all these discussions into work. So Duncan is usually focusing on sustainability, but over the past, I think, 24 months or so, he is focused too much on the political preparations of the COP. But still, as the expert on sustainability, maybe we can first start with Duncan about Glasgow's climate policies and implementations, and then we focus on the logistics in the next round as we agreed before. Duncan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eunice, and hello to all my colleagues and allies from local government around the world, wherever you may be. It's always a privilege to engage with you and to make common cause with you in the interests of local government, especially on national ambitions for climate. I hope to welcome you here in Glasgow in November, just as my colleagues have been saying. But if for any reason you are not in Glasgow this November, there will always be a welcome other times. Please do bear that in mind. COP is something where we're wanting a legacy of enhanced relationships, both locally and internationally, and we mean that seriously, so it'd be good to connect with you. I suppose for Glasgow, in many ways, we are looking at how COP can allow us to turn from the COVID crisis, which we had not foreseen, to address once more the climate emergency, which we already knew to be looming over us. And we are looking, as we recover from COVID, to deliver sustainable, improved quality of life for our people in Glasgow in ways that actually bring those two issues together. We are very mindful that when the spotlight of the world turns to my city, so much more so will the gaze of Glaswegians also be upon this place. And we need to deliver, therefore, not only in general policy terms, together with our peers from around the world, but also to make sure that we can see real change on the ground in the lived experience of our communities. And it's bringing those two things together through COP and at COP that is a key challenge for us, and I suppose for local government more generally. So in that light, I suppose we've been going around the world several times, thanks to our friends in ICLE and others, via digital means, with three key messages. The first is that whilst nation states make pledges at places like COP, or sometimes fail to agree all that much, it's cities and local authorities which are delivering on the promise of a low carbon and climate resilient future. So you've heard that the United Kingdom has a target of achieving net zero carbon by 2045. The same for Scotland is 2040. We in Glasgow have set the date of 2030 to deliver on that for the city. And so we like to say achievement for Glasgow is success for Scotland and for the UK. And that's a message I know all of you in the different nations, wherever you may be, will also be ensuring that happens. The other key message is that sustainability and social justice must go together. And that's a message that we're really engaging with groups like ICLE, C40, and many of the other collaborations on this, on the logos down there, and my colleagues from Scotland and the UK. The Scottish Just Transition Commission, which published its report earlier this year, talked of the need for an orderly and managed transition. I can tell you, as a post-industrial city, all our history is a disorderly and unmanaged transition. So there's a challenge, but that's what COP helps us to provoke discussion and to engage with our partners about. In terms of practical action locally in Glasgow, we're looking at particularly how we can turn some of those scars of our industrial past into assets, where we can use vacant and derelict land, for instance, to have ground-mounted solar PV, where we can deal with trapped waters from previous mine workings to extract heat. What was always seen as a problem becomes more of an asset for us, where we can use what was previously an unloved and vandalized canal to deal with surface water runoff from a new residential development in the city centre. Things like this, I think, are typical of what cities do. And we're looking at things like our distinct flatted form. 70% of us live in flats. So we need to think about retrofit, but we also need to think about access to green space when we don't have gardens. And we've seen that, of course, in the COVID crisis. 50% of us don't own cars. So access to the streets for people, for walking, wheeling and cycling becomes more significant too. And we're looking at a big retrofit project for 420,000 domestic properties in the city region. We'll be looking, of course, as part of our approach with our friends in core cities and the London boroughs at finance. Glasgow, of course, will look, if we can, to pick the pocket of national government, be it Scottish or UK. We're very omnivorous there, but we also know we need to reach out to the private capital markets as well. And that's where things like the Climate Investment Commission that Will's just described is really significant. We also want, of course, to work with business as well as our communities to ensure that their green business practices drive sustainable profits, which allow us to get well-paid jobs for our young people coming out of school. And so I'm very mindful of what Hilary was talking about in terms of green skills. We need to be working on STEM subjects with our young people and making sure that they're coming out of school and college and university ready to take, hopefully, new green jobs in a revised and resilient economy. My final words there, really, in terms of all the policies that we're putting together, is very much about a strong people focus. You saw earlier one of the images that Eunice put up with the logo, People Make Glasgow. That's a truth for us, as I know it will be for the places and councils and regions you all come from. And it's something we want to ensure that COP allows us to drive a continuing conversation about carbon and climate and justice with our people before COP, during the event, but especially afterwards for the many years to come. And for us, that will be a legacy of the event where we think we'll really be able to see positive benefits. Thanks, and I'm happy to talk about some of our specific arrangements in the next segment.
Exactly. Thanks, Duncan. And that is really the power of a strong hosts of those COPs. And we really hope the negotiators, they will also be able to witness all these agendas that they have been talking in the policy papers or in the rooms. In fact, it's happening in the ground and in the streets and in the boroughs and the councils of the city, so that they can be much more inspired to be doing or committing to do more. So with this, let me thank you all for all your really inspirational discussions. And I'm very happy that we also have colleagues from the national governments among the audience. And I'm sure when we will make this published, there will also be more interest so that we can connect to the agenda of the COP. So now that we are talking about, of course, the LGMA is a broad community worldwide, we are eager to see what can be expected in Glasgow. So a couple of things that we would like to give you as some of the latest updates from yesterday's call with the UK presidency, but also to refresh what has happened. First of all, official announcement finally came up on the 9th of August from the UK government. And it's just an announcement at the website. It has not been yet circulated to the parties as far as an official documentation. And it's also true, when the UK announced these procedures or rules, they also said that they're open for improvement. So This situation is as of today. This is particularly now information is relevant for our international participants, those who are planning to go there. Obviously, this is conditions for UK welcoming. There's another part of the story, which is anyone who is traveling internationally, they also have a trouble to come back, because UK is also a red list for many other countries. So they will also have to be quarantined. So it's not just going to UK, but also coming back. Therefore, it adds additional complications. This will definitely impact the number and diversity of participants. That's why it is very, very sensitive. So the current decision, and this is the second point that we have to highlight, that those privileged, let's say offers from the UK government, because they already have implemented several practices, this will only apply for those who are registered to the COP through the Blue Zone UNFCCC accreditations, which we don't know at the moment how many in number. This has always been a challenge, because the logistics, the Blue Zone is always an issue with the venue, but this time it's even more important, because those vaccinated, let's say, flexibilities will not apply to anyone. It's only applying for those who are in the Blue Zone accredited badges, and these are eligible for those accredited organizations. And obviously, it's still not possible to guess how many will be available. So if you're in a green and amber list countries, the privilege is that if you have a COP26 Blue Zone starting from 6th of September onwards, you would not be checked whether you are vaccinated or not. You can directly enter to the COP territory and to the UK. So the accreditation will now allow you to do this. Whereas if you're an ordinary citizen, your vaccination can only be accepted with the ones that is acknowledged by the UK. And again, the green and amber list countries, even they're not vaccinated, they can enter to the COP without any quarantine. So that is the most important, let's say, privilege. The second one for the red list countries, those who are vaccinated, according to those, let's say, backtracking, the 14 days of full implementation, 2 badges or two jabs, if they are vaccinated, they will have to go through only 5 days of quarantine instead of 10 days of quarantine. However, it still is 5 days, and it is a quarantine period, and it costs. So, if you're not vaccinated, this is 10 days. And in the case of a visitor without any badges, you just go to the country and you just have to go through 10 days of quarantine by paying the cost, because it's not just where you are, you have to be in specially designated hotels. So it's not wherever you want. As I said, this is extremely, let's say, difficult for any negotiators. One reason is that a lot of national governments in many of the developing countries, the delegations who are following the climate processes are not necessarily vaccinated, because they may not be in the priority list of their countries. So vaccination through UK sources is also an important agenda. But there's another elephant in the room. Because of this backtracking, if you are able to be, or if you would like to receive an AstraZeneca vaccine, you should have done it yesterday if you want to attend to the COP on the first day of the 31st of October. Again, those who would be following a week after, they may still have 1 week ahead. But if any negotiator, if any of a participant who wants to attend from the first day of COP, they should have done their jabs already yesterday. So these are the challenges. We will have to see how it will evolve. Those options or those scenarios, for example, that we have discussed with the presidency, we have shared with this in our mailings, and our colleague Felix Dodds kindly uploaded it as guest blog. So those you can follow this from those tracking, and there's the website. And in the morning, Malini Mera from Globe also reminded us that access conditions to Scotland and access conditions to England may differ because of this devolved administration. Health is a devolved administration process for UK in the UK. So we have to see what tiny nuances that may come up, and hopefully our colleagues from Scottish government will also help us to make this nuances very clear, so that no one is faced with unpleasant surprises. We also know many delegations may prefer to go through London because of the connections, the flight, that then changes, because then they have to follow the English, let's say, requirements. So it's a bit complicated. What's next? First of all, next week, Tuesday, is the deadline for all the accredited organizations to submit their lists, wish lists, dream lists. of how many people they would like to bring. How many of them will be eligible, we'll have to see the decision from the Secretariat. And this decision is primarily based on two parameters. One, the conditions of the physical space, which we still don't know. I mean, no one, at least those that I'm familiar with, no one has seen the physical planning of COP26 at the moment. No one has seen how many people will be eligible into the rooms, because usually we have hundreds of people, but because of COVID indoor social distancing, the capacity is literally decreased. I don't know by how, but it is decreased. So this first criteria is the availability of space. The second criteria is the past performance of the organizations, and obviously the Secretariat has already announced that there are 500 more networks or organizations who have been accredited for the first time to COP26, primarily from UK. So they will also like to have new delegations. So it's a huge, complex situation, and UNFCCC Secretariat will do their best to accommodate everyone's wish. And starting from 6th of September, the likelihood is that you have an X number, you would get X percent, is Y percentage of this. So you have to go back to your delegations, you have to negotiate who would sacrifice, who would not be able to come. And of course, the other challenge is that there are already countries and NGOs who are always saying that, look, even if they pay my cost, I cannot come because of all these procedures. So in fact, the quotas may be suddenly higher than what we have used to say law, because there will be less demand, but it's all hypothetical at the moment. And that starting from 6th of September, the organization will issue their confirmations, which means they will get their acknowledgement letters. With this, they will attend to the UK visa applications, that they will get their visas for free, but only those who are in the blue zone. And they will also be enjoying this access. By 30th of September, UNFCCC will also announce side event applications. So until that moment, UNFCCC is still processing. This was the question from our colleagues from Regions 4. There have been merging of side events, but UNFCCC is now assessing, and there will be, let's say, announcements coming soon. Maybe we would be asked for merging more, because the lack of capacity would ask us to be much more flexible in our plans. Obviously, this leaves only 1 month left. If you are invited to a side event in the UNFCCC, whether you will have still a badge to be speaking, whether you will still have any vaccines available or applicable, we don't know. But that's the complexities that will come up. Under these conditions, the likelihood of an orientation for us, which is not too much different from the previous COPs. I mean, that is more or less similar wherever we go. But this year, the biggest news or the biggest difference would be the LGMA Multi-Level Action Pavilion in the Blue Zone. Those who remember, our first experience on the Blue Zone Pavilion was in 2009 in Copenhagen. Since then, in Paris, in Marrakesh, in Bonn, we had our pavilions in the Green Zone, which means you are not restricted. Anyone who is in the city were able to enter to these rooms, they could speak, they could attend. But when you are talking about the local and LGMA pavilion in the Blue Zone, you have to be restricted with your badges. And that is making one of the difficulties, because we know the Green Zone, let's say, for example, applications are announced. There are frustrations that many LGMA members are not eligible to get slot in the Green Zone of UK. They would look forward to joining us in the pavilion, but then there will be a question. If you don't have access to the pavilion, because pavilion holders do not have this possibility to give you additional badges, so it will be very difficult. Even if you want to be there, it doesn't make sense, because you will not be physically present. This brings the challenge of opening connectedness, the virtual element, both the Green Zone, but also globally. Many developing countries, if they're not able to join us, how will they be in the pavilion? We'll have to discuss. But pavilion is our base, our home, whereas there will be numerous opportunities in the UNFCCC Blue Zone. The first UNFCCC type is the negotiations. You remember, we will still be intervening in the official discussions, the sessions that we will speak on behalf of our constituency. We will share our proposals, but there's also Marrakesh Partnership. As you may remember from the previous slides, originally Marrakesh Partnership sessions were limited to 5 to 6 days. Now it's 12 days across the whole 2 weeks. There will be Marrakesh Partnership events. Obviously, it will also be a challenge, because considering also the accommodation cost, it's not easy to expect anyone to stay that long. So we will have to make sure that our presence of our delegations, mayors, governors, councillors, environment managers, they may not be all at the same time at the same place, and they may not be the summit like that. So we would still like to honor them, that they are part of the big family, that they are welcome and they are playing equal role. And in addition to Blue Zone, UNFCCC and LGMA and Marrakesh, there is another Blue Zone opportunity, which is the country pavilions. And that is very, very popular because every nation wants to also now, because of those multi-level NDCs, be it Japan, be it China, be it African group, everyone is offering space for local government. And we particularly encourage, especially the national networks, regional networks, to make benefit of this presence, the EU pavilion and the US center, so that there will be multiple opportunities that there will be present. And it's even more important because then we can also say that we are everywhere. We will be making sure that the voice of multi-level action is everywhere. So our mandate is to make sure all of them are in synchrony and all of them are receiving appropriate recognition and that our messages are consistent. Then there's this green zone, those who are able to be in Glasgow by any means, who do not have access to UNFCCC, but they want to enjoy and they want to be part of this important agenda in Glasgow. So that is also split into two. The one is the UK green zone, which is walking distance, and this is being now shaped because of the presidency is now making the list of events which will be hosted on these days. The format and these conditions are still, I think, in the making. We know many of our applications are being rejected, but we are still hopeful, as you have seen from core cities, LGA, COSLA, we are hoping that they will have some events taking place, CCFLA, Cities Alliance that we heard before. And then there's a Glasgow and now even Scotland zone. When we say Glasgow zone, obviously Glasgow chambers, as Duncan mentioned, and it will speaking more. But even in Glasgow, we have universities, we have hotels, we have public spaces. So a plethora of mobilization will happen there, and we have to check how much we will be there, whether we will be able to voice theirs, and obviously the messages from Glasgow chambers will be important. But we also know because of accommodation, a lot of people will be in Edinburgh. Edinburgh is the administrative capital as well. That there will be a lot of organizations or processes taking place, so that the distance of travel commuting is around 1 hour, which is manageable in the COP conditions. So there will also be a lot of things going on in Edinburgh. That means it's the Scotland zone as well. So that's what we would be expecting. With that, I want to giving the floor first to our colleagues, starting from Duncan. The pavilion at the moment, we're still trying to figure out the exact conditions because it's one of the most complicated and one of the most costly, I must confess. So we are trying to make sure that when we offer the planning, we would like to accommodate the expectations of our partners who have been turned down from other applications, but also make sure that this is a manageable process, especially having these virtual connections that those who are not there even could also be enjoying this. I will not go into the pavilion because there will be more updates coming up soon, but instead I would like to stop here and start to turn the, let's say, the order of speakers. And I would like to first give this floor to Duncan because he has the most probably comprehensive view of what's going on in Glasgow around these days.
Thanks very much, Yunus, and thanks once again for your comprehensive overview of the things that are going on in the blue and the green zone. We in Glasgow as host city have learned a lot from connecting with you and ICLEI about your experience from previous COPs and how we think COP in Glasgow is going to be worked through, obviously subject to all the challenges we find with COVID that you've just mentioned. So we're quite mindful in Glasgow that sometimes the COP host city can be a bit anonymous. You go to a kind of secure zone for the green and blue areas and you don't necessarily get a sense of place. We want people to know that they are in a city called Glasgow, in a nation called Scotland within the United Kingdom. And we're working especially to use our Hotel de Ville, the city chambers, to be a welcoming place for our partners, particularly from other city and local government collaborations during COP. So we're planning a set of activities that go along with the United Kingdom COP presidency themes each day across COP that will be involving other cities, other mayors, and particularly other collaborations like ICLEI like C40 and so on. Obviously, there's a key focus on Thursday, the 11th of November, because that's the presidency day for cities. Oh, there we are, thank you. Cities, regions, and the built environment. Thank you, Eunice. But we're looking at many, many other events throughout those 2 weeks almost. We're hoping to start on the evening of Saturday, the 30th of October, with a reception for our young friends from COP26, the Conference of Youth, to offer them a place. And then on Sunday, we'll be doing work with faith communities and with Stop Climate Chaos Scotland, the principal umbrella group for NGOs in Scotland. I won't go into all those details, but clearly we'll be working with many of the partnerships who've already spoken with the core cities on finance, with our friends from COSLA and UK 100 on Thursday the 11th, and lots of things in between. There is one thing I should add, or two things really. First of all, we are still looking at making sure we get the tech right, because there's a lot of people who will not be able to come into the room because they're not even going to be coming to Glasgow. And so we need to get hybrid solutions for the events that we're having to go along with the in-person attendance of hopefully many of the people on today's webinar. But we do know as well there's a power imbalance there with all the injustices for the global south, many of which find themselves in UK red zone countries and will find it hard to come to Glasgow. So we need to find ways of ensuring that we in the room are convened by the person on the screen and that we respect time zones so that morning in Glasgow is evening in East Asia, afternoon is in Glasgow is morning in the Americas and Caribbean, things like that. But we're also mindful as well that we would like to welcome as many people as possible to the city chambers, but probably there'll have to be a form of invitation that you'll need to show someone when we come through the door, because issues of security are not ones that I can decide upon, and the police and security services probably will say that city chambers needs a degree of checking on who's coming. But what that means over the coming weeks is that we can work with our friends in UK 100, COSLA and ICLE to get those invitations out to people to see if we can bring people into our host city zone. We know we need to avoid clashes with things going on in the blue and green zone, but equally we know that these things get programmed very late, and it's good for us therefore to think about our activities and to set them down so that some of the mayors know when they arrive, perhaps in the early part of COP, the 1st and 2nd November, with the world leaders, that they have events in our city chambers. And when they come towards the end for that key day on the 11th of November, there are activities for them there as well. So we're hoping to have a whole program of events there, and we're working particularly, as I said, with our networks, and that should allow us as host city to have a legacy of those relationships we can still draw upon on November the 13th, and of action that we can join with you on towards COP27 and much further beyond. So I'll stop at that point, Eunice, because I don't want to go into too much detail, but please everyone, there's going to be lots of opportunities. We hope to invite your mayors into the city chambers during COP, and I look forward to seeing you in person.
Excellent, Duncan, and congratulations once again for your preparations. One thing for all colleagues, you may recall we have a shared tracking sheet for the COP blue and green zone, or the UK managed zones. We will create a new sheet in this paper, and that we will add this planning of these blues and green zones so that everyone can enter, so that we can also have an understanding of who is doing what and who will be where when. And obviously, as you have seen, the challenge is that the blue zone will be very busy. There will be a lot of demand for us, but we should also not forget, as Duncan mentioned, the happening in the city of Glasgow. One thing we are discussing with Duncan and obviously the leadership of the Glasgow City Council is that on the 11th of November, how to make the best use of the cities and built environment. This is also the closure of the action agenda, the high level, let's say Marrakesh partnership agenda. Very likely Glasgow Chamber Hall, like all the cities and regions, will be the place to probably celebrate all our engagements. And this could be jointly hosted by ICLE as the LGMA focal point, but also especially under the invitation of the city of Glasgow, but collectively as the LGMA community welcoming the whole action agenda partners. But we will have to see how details could happen. There is a lot of questions about a summit, cities and regions summit, especially because of this restriction that we do not feel that there will be enough sense of that peaking moment because of the spreading of the whole participation across the 2 weeks. It sounds a bit risky to call only one day a summit of cities and regions, honestly speaking. Therefore, we are rather inclined that a number of agendas that is taking place at the City Hall, at Chambers Hall, could be part of this local governments and LGMAs, let's say, key moments that we enjoy with Susan Aitken, the councils, and the City of Glasgow and Scottish Government and others, so that we make sure that everybody feels welcomed. Every leader, every participant is part of the process. So I think that's a message, as Duncan mentioned, that we should be able to sensitively frame it. And obviously, hybrid planning is one of the hardest in this kind of situations. So let's now, being also conscious of our time, I don't know whether if anyone has any timing issue among our speakers. I know Serafin had a problem. Serafin, if you like, we can continue with you so that you can reserve your time, and then we'll continue with other colleagues so that we make the best use of our time.
Thank you, much appreciated. Otherwise, you will see roaring children knocking on my door just in a moment, given the time. But I think it's also quite fitting because Glasgow being the host city of COP in this COP, and Glasgow being the biggest local authority in Scotland and our biggest member of COSLA, just to complement what Duncan has just said. I mean, we obviously will support Glasgow in their engagement. And the best way we do that, in addition to obviously practical things, domestic issues in terms of engaging with the rest of the councils in Scotland, that they feel welcome in participating in the activities that Duncan is organizing or is leading. We will also, as COSLA, as we, like every national association of local government of a host country does in previous COPs, to bring the link with our partners from across the Europe and across the world, our like-minded colleagues, they are equivalents from other countries. Many of them, as you know, are national figures in their own right in their countries, and therefore it's important in terms of engagement and in terms of relaying the message of COP and also influencing the national delegations. Some of them are actually going to be part of the national delegations. So of course we will be working, as you know, obviously with ICLEI, but also with in Glasgow, but also and particularly with CMR and ECLG, to actually make sure that that's happening. Our ambition remains the same, to have engagement in the green zone, in the Glasgow zone, in the green zone, and in the blue zone. As you know, there's quite a few things that have to be rearranged, but we are confident we can pull that through. As you know, and as Duncan mentioned, a lot of things will all happen down to the last mile. And last time, just as it happened in Madrid, just happened for different reasons. So last time was for a demonstration, as for COVID, but you know, we will get there. And as I say, our plans continue as described in previous occasions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Serafin. Just for one point for clarification, COSLA does not have accreditation yet, isn't it so? So we will have to work together with CMR and ICLEI in terms of blue zone accreditations, correct?
That's what the reasons. I mean, lengthy legal explanation why is the case, but that's one of the things.
No. It's not just the reason, it's just the fact, so that because we're at this with Secretariat to see how many new organizations have been accredited, so that we can make sure that there's an appropriate sharing of our quotas, and or at least make sure that we're making the best use of our resources. That was the reason. And obviously that will be another agenda that will follow later on. That's great. And Serafin will continue with you. So maybe we can now go to LGA if you want. I see Hillary, and you already had a presentation, so I can stop sharing my screen and you can have yours.
Thank you. I've only got one slide. Okay, let's jump to this last, here we are, that last slide. So the one thing that we know, or one thing that we've heard, we've yet to fill in the paperwork. Love a bit of paperwork, but we have an exhibition stand in the green zone on the 11th of November, and it's been suggested to us that that should be LGA and the Northern Ireland LGA together. So we're working with them to work out what that is. Again, we're likely to kind of use that as a kind of showcasing opportunity. We're open to other suggestions. We don't have a kind of formal route into the blue zone in our own right. So, you know, we're keeping our eyes and ears open for opportunities. but then this is not actually at COP, but I just thought people might be interested to see these if they've got a bit of time. So we've started, colleagues at the LGA have put together a virtual tour of England. So you can go onto our website and there's an interactive map where we've put together with some case studies, so you can follow that as well. And then we've got another campaign, which is our local path to net zero, sort of similar sort of principles, but it's more, I suppose it's more kind of context. Again, we've got some video case studies, but we've also got sort of partner organisations, third sector organisations, private finance companies talking about why local government is important to net zero. So we've got those two campaigns running as well to make a bit of kind of again, as others have said, to make it more engaging and to make it not just about Glasgow, but to kind of give us a chance to bring those two things in. So that's it really. Like I say, the one tangible thing we have is that exhibition stand, but we'll see. Let's see what comes out. All right, then that was it for me. Thank you. And let me stop the screen sharing. There we go.
Thanks, Hilary. Just one clarification. Are you having any discussion with the UK presidency for any party overflow quota for LGA members that can be used? I mean, knowing that you don't have an accreditation, but you can make use of this. There are a lot of countries who are enabling this. Have you discussed this with them?
With the UK government? No, no.
Okay. Well, I think it's still not over. You can still think about it. One question, Hilary, I assume there will be another round of Cities and Regions Advisory Council. Will there be any meeting between now and COP?
Yes, the group said that they would have one more meeting. The last meeting, it's our chairman who's our formal representative. I sat in, but most of the conversation there was either about the international part of it, but also the UK government's plans to have regional green zones. The LGA is not involved in that, but I think this is the idea that they'll have, they've got a kind of electric bus going on a tour of the UK, and they're encouraging councils. They've got a bit of funding first, councils in UK, to have the kind of regional, to have kind of local green zone, and they're talking about maybe doing some kind of satellite links up with Glasgow. So that was the main thrust of that. And again, the UK government are quite keen they've provided toolkits for councils to use to kind of amplify the COP26 messages. So I think the focus of that last meeting was about getting messages out to communities, if you see what I mean, rather than the specifics of how local government would get involved in COP.
But
all positive stuff, but we're still, again, like everybody else, we don't have a lot of information about numbers for COP or physical spaces. We're like everybody else, we're in a bit of a holding pattern. So
let's stay in touch so that we can explore what opportunities. I mean, there's always hope. You can always the 11th hour mechanism.
There's always hope, Eunice. Thank you.
Good. Bill, you mentioned about your events, but is there anything you want to add already, or in addition to what you have been sharing in terms of your agenda for COP?
No, I don't think so, to be honest, Eunice. Just to reiterate really that we will continue talking about ways in which we can make sure our events on November 3rd and November 11th are as inclusive as possible, and make sure we keep you and partners and colleagues aware of them, and extend an open invitation.
Excellent, excellent. Talia, so shall we hear from you, UK 100? How is your plans going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're still, like everyone else, in the planning phase. I think we're hoping to have a proper program of events by the end of September, but we'll see if we have any more clarity. The key things from us are, over the past 6 months, we've been conducting research into in-country local government climate networks. So we've almost got a representative from every continent, and we're going to be launching this in the Blue Zone in the UK pavilion, hopefully. We're just waiting for final confirmation. I'd say we're about 90% sure. And that is on Cities and Built Environment Day on the 11th of November. So we're going to have a panel session to launch the report. So we'll have either representatives from the network secretariats or member members of the networks to speak about this. It's a 1-hour panel session, and that we will live stream so that it is more inclusive, and we would invite everyone to attend that. And it's really looking into why local government climate networks are important, especially for delivering on national climate action. And kind of to bring this report to life, we're creating a network of networks salon, which will be outside of the blue zone or the green zone, hopefully in one of Glasgow City Council spaces. And that will be from the second Wednesday to the Friday, so for 3 days. And we'll have some networking sessions, kind of informal breakfast, lunch, evening receptions, where we will invite, you know, our members to come together with local government, nationally, internationally, but also with other partners such as businesses. So we'd love to have people attend. So if you're interested in attending, or your network is, I'll post my email address in the chat. So please do get in touch. But we'll make sure that that networking is not just in person, but virtual as well. So we'll have kind of laptops and tech stations set up so our members can connect with those who can't be at COP. So yeah, they're our main things that we're planning.
Excellent. Just to recall once again, we will, once we circulate the links to this webinars and the presentation, we will also share the link to our tracking sheet for LGMA COP26 so that we can insert those so that we can start to be informed. One thing that the challenge of having the last day of the action agenda reserved for cities and built environment is that any outcomes can be too late to enter into the negotiations box. So we have to be very innovative as collectively, how to make sure we still keep that day, let's say, interesting, that everybody should come and visit us. But let's remember that is the last day of the negotiation, or the one before last, where majority of the attention is going to the presidency outcomes, the negotiations. So there is a risk for us as the LGMA and all this community that we maybe be victim of the hype of this the 11th hour negotiations, and we all know that it can continue. So let's be realistically really innovative to make sure that our calls are communicated or shared in advance, because many things can come up earlier in the week. And that we also still say that for details, for more information, come to our pavilion, come to our events. The second point that I also circulate this in the morning session, which again is not an official ICLE position, but there is a serious discussion, especially with this balance or lack of balance in terms of participation. And because this green and amber list countries are able to attend to COP freely, in terms of participation, I think there may be a moment for all of us to discuss, to respect with the solidarity with our other partners in the Global South or on those red lists. We may still think of that to limit participation to COP. This can be an interesting debate. Even though you are vaccinated, you have the hotels available for you, you have your tickets, you may say that, look, I'm not going to COP because I am aware that my members or my networks are there representing me. I know there are a lot of others who want to come, but they cannot come. But in order to share their sentiment, that I'm also ready to join virtually. I think we really have to think about it, because we have to really be innovative in terms of those conditions beyond ourselves, how to make sure it is not disturbing our solidarity. And we can even show that even those hardest moments, like we have shown in the COVID, we can still use additional moments where we can say that, yes, physical presence, but also virtual. So it's a lesson for all of us. I think, again, we still have to wait for a couple of more days, the quotas and others, and then we will be having much more clear picture. I really would like to encourage all of us to consider how to make the Blue Zone Pavilion the best. We're very happy to have the Scottish government support to this, let's say, majority of the planning and the design of this process, but it still needs additional funding because of the cost recovery processes, so that we will get back to you. And I know it will be a short time, but we will look forward to all those to contribute, so that we make sure also the pavilion as the base for us, and we spread throughout the blue zone and the green zone through the base camp from pavilion, and then go to the city hall and make sure that the new era, the multi-level climate action for a new transformation starting in Glasgow with our collective efforts. So with those in mind, I really like to thank you very much. There's a big respect from all my participants on this community for your efforts and time and sharing with us, and feel free to share with us in written form so that we can include into the presentation we circulate, but there will be more opportunities to share all this information later on as well. And take care, have a nice day, and good day to all of you wherever you are, and look forward to meeting soon.